They came in robes of command, armor gilded with honor, voices sharpened by centuries of conquest. The Interstellar Council convened in the hollowed core of the dreadnought Vextora, its walls humming with the latent energy of fleets arrayed across half the known galaxy. Dozens of alien races, each with storied empires and blood-stained histories, gathered to witness the reckoning of Earth. The Valkyrie general stood at the center, 8 feet of coiled muscle and iridium-plated rage. His forearms remained still, but his mandibles clicked with restrained fury. Behind his triple-layered ocular shield, tactical data scrolled in silence. He spoke once, and the chamber hushed. We issued terms. A calculated show of dominance. 17 battleships. 8 mechanized legions. We gave Earth the dignity of fear. A pause. The faintest tremble in the chamber's artificial gravity systems as nervous system emissions from the psychic calther pulsed in agitation. And they sent one man? Disdain rippled through the hall. The Karivans chittered. The Brythel blinked in disbelief. The rain-born hissed their laughter in ultraviolet. Disrespect, mockery, confusion, all crashing against the hardened silence of the general. He stepped forward, activating the hollow projector. The chamber dimmed as a still image formed, the black silhouette of a humanoid figure mid-stride, fire and shattered exoarmor behind him. No insignia. No legion. No backup. Designation: Elias Ward. Rank unknown. Life science off the charts. Psychological warfare off the scale. Killed 3 war beasts with a monomolecular wire. Sabotaged every orbital array on Veldar 9 without detection. 43 confirmed command kills. No survivors left to contest the count. The laughter stopped. A slow, rising static filled the room, the sound of silent threat recognition across dozens of neural networks. The Valkyrie narrowed his eyes. 1. Soldier. A diplomat from the crystalline Ether the Rose. But why? Surely Earth's forces. Earth doesn't need an army. The general snapped. Earth breeds soldiers. Not in numbers. In depth. In extremes. You think war is strategy. They think war is adaptation. He tapped the air, shifting the feed to thermal overlays, Elias moving through a high-density battlefield without triggering any sensors. Another shift, comms intercepted between alien troops, speaking in whispered panic about a ghost, a demon, a voidwalker. 3 of our elite teams detonated themselves to avoid capture. He didn't even approach them. They believed he was already there. The Caltha representative twitched. No hive-mind link could trace him. He doesn't project intent. He doesn't broadcast fear either, the general said. Because he doesn't feel it. The chamber sat in cold stillness now. All mockery vanished, leaving a quiet that stretched across light years of ego. I called this meeting to correct a miscalculation, the general continued. We believed humans were behind the curve. That their silence meant weakness. We forgot what silence is, the sound before a predator strikes. He turned his gaze to the elder of the Cyrex Dominion. You once said humanity was a cultural footnote. That they lacked the evolutionary discipline to matter. The elder lowered its eyes, ancient and blind. We showed them fleets. They sent a man. And he took a planet. Another image hovered midair, the aftermath. Veldar 9, once a key stronghold of the Valkyrie Empire, now reduced to scorched ruins and static. No command signatures. No life. The orbital defense grid had been turned inward and triggered remotely. This wasn't victory, the general growled. This was a warning. One man came. And we will never see him again, not because he is dead, but because his job is done. Silence deepened. He didn't come to conquer. He came to demonstrate. He's not their hero. He's their statement. A whisper passed through the delegates, translated into 100 tongues but meaning the same in all. Why only one? The general let it linger before answering. Because that's all they needed. Not one being in the chamber dared speak further. Across the stars, war calculations began again, not in strength, but in fear. Not in tactics, but in legend. And behind it all, the shape of a man walking through fire, unarmed, unafraid, unforgettable. Elias Ward was never supposed to exist. Not officially. Not on any document. Not in any database accessible by even Earth's highest command. His file was sealed behind 17 firewalls and classified beyond top secret. To the world, he died 7 years ago during a deep space recon mission that never returned. In truth, he survived, on a hostile moon with no breathable atmosphere, no food, no communication. 11 months later, a signal burst from that dead world. When the retrieval team arrived, they found Elias standing alone among the corpses of local fauna, 37 kills carved into the hull of his down-drop pod. That was the beginning. The humans had long abandoned the concept of mass warfare. Numbers meant nothing in the age of orbital annihilation. Instead, Earth adapted. Small, precise, psychological. They didn't win battles by crushing. They won by breaking. It wasn't about superiority. It was about demonstrating futility. Project Cerberus was born out of that philosophy. One soldier. Maximum impact. Total silence. Elias was the final product. No formal rank. No national allegiance. He was selected not for loyalty, but for capability. He didn't follow orders, he followed mission parameters. Indoctrination was unnecessary. His will had already been forged in the crucible of complete isolation. He returned not with madness, but with clarity. His training was minimal. That was the point. Earth's doctrine had shifted. The soldier was not to be shaped. He was to be observed, refined, left intact. Elias trained himself more than he was trained. Project leads only added enhancements where needed: neural reinforcement, skeletal density upgrades, regenerative nanites calibrated to function under alien biochemistry. His nervous system could process fear without registering it. He didn't react emotionally, he processed. Efficiently. Instinctively. Weapons were unnecessary. He made his own. Given a carbon fiber string and a magnetic coil, he created a rail-assisted monowire capable of slicing a tank. Given access to alien code, he learned to override language barriers in hours. Within a week of exposure, he was hacking field-grade enemy encryption by instinct. He was a soldier, yes, but more than that, he was adaptation in human form. Earth's leaders never intended to fight a war. Their directive was simple: respond, not escalate. The alien incursion wasn't met with retaliation, it was met with demonstration. They didn't want to win the galaxy. They wanted to ensure the galaxy never asked again. Sending Elias wasn't an act of aggression. It was a message written in blood and silence. The launch was unceremonious. No farewell. No camera feeds. He was inserted into alien space with one directive: neutralize strategic confidence. That was the language used. Not destruction. Not domination. Neutralize belief. His arrival was undetectable. Elias operated without communication. Every trace of him, biometric, digital, psychic, was masked. Not by tech, but by him. His ability to suppress his presence couldn't be replicated, because it didn't come from equipment. It came from control. When he moved, he was undetectable. When he struck, the data was corrupted before it was recorded. He required no sleep cycles. Nanite optimization allowed him to function at peak output for weeks. His internal systems filtered out toxins, atmospheric pathogens, and neurointrusive viral forms. He didn't adapt to environments. Environments adapted to him. What truly made him dangerous, however, wasn't the enhancements. It was the psychology. Elias didn't crave combat. He didn't hate the enemy. He simply executed the task. Cold. Focused. Clean. There was no malice, no vengeance, no ideological tether. He didn't carry flags. He didn't chant slogans. He dismantled belief systems with silence and left no stories to tell. Earth had learned from history. Empires fall not because of battles lost, but because of faith broken. The moment you make an enemy believe resistance is meaningless, you win without fighting. That was the core of Project Cerberus. Elias wasn't meant to kill armies. He was meant to make armies abandon themselves. When the aliens sent fleets, Earth sent Elias. Because they understood the truth the galaxy hadn't learned yet: brute force is outdated. The future belongs to precision. To impact. To humans who know when not to speak, when not to show, when not to leave anyone alive to tell the tale. Elias wasn't Earth's best soldier. He was Earth's quietest answer. The descent was unregistered. No entry burn, no tracking data, no signature. One moment, the perimeter sensors of Veldar 9 read clear. The next, their northern quadrant went dark. Patrols dispatched found only static. Minutes later, the secondary communications hub ruptured from within. No breach, no warning. Every camera feed ceased simultaneously. The first body was discovered 2 hours later, slumped at a console, spine severed by a thin, hairline incision. No entry wound. No scream. Just dead. By the third hour, 8 forward outposts stopped responding. Internal audits found no signs of combat. Only silence, then absence. By the 5th hour, whispers started among the alien troops. They spoke of a shape moving without light. Of breath that fogged the air in sealed bunkers. Of footsteps that never echoed. Squads began refusing orders. Commanders doubled guards, then tripled them. Yet the disappearances accelerated. Commandant Varkel, a seasoned Velkari tactician, deployed 2 elite units equipped with full-spectrum visual, auditory, and psionic tracking. Both squads were lost within minutes. Their final transmissions cut midward. No struggle. No impact. Just abrupt termination. What came next wasn't a battle. It was an unraveling. Power grids failed. Environmental controls fluctuated. Doors locked and wouldn't open. Then alarms blared system-wide: fire in the hangars, gas leaks in the barracks, ammunition dumps breached. Every failure happened with surgical timing, orchestrated to cascade into chaos. As panic spread, soldiers turned on each other in confusion. Reports conflicted. Some claimed sabotage, others swore they saw a man walking calmly through high-explosive crossfire without injury. One survivor described a face, but it degraded under neural examination, as if memory itself rejected the image. By nightfall, the entire central command structure had collapsed. Not from attack, but from paranoia, exhaustion, and the psychological strain of an unseen force dismantling their reality. Elias didn't strike from a distance. He moved within them, eroding their cohesion, corrupting their perception. A kill wasn't just a removal. It was a message. Corpses were arranged precisely, one at a time, at shift change, always in the line of sight of the next to find it. Heart rates climbed. Sleep cycles broke. Coordination degraded. Within hours, the garrison ceased functioning as a unit. The central AI governing Veldar IX's defense protocol self-terminated after Elias introduced a logic paradox into its decision matrix. He inserted a line of code that rendered all threats as non-hostile if observed, but hostile if not. The AI could no longer process target designation. It shut down to prevent catastrophic misfire. Only one defensive turret remained operational. It fired once. The round pierced a barracks and killed 40 sleeping soldiers. There had been no enemy in sight. Elias bypassed armor by moving where armor didn't reach, inside the mind. He never needed overwhelming firepower. He used precision. He learned alien nervous systems faster than their own field medics. When he did strike physically, it was to prove a point. To show that even in direct contact, resistance was irrelevant. The base's command leader initiated emergency evacuation protocols. Drop ships were fueled. Coordinates set. But when the launch began, only 2 made it off the ground. One exploded mid-air, sabotaged from within. The other returned hours later with no pilot. In 12 hours, an entire military installation, designed to repel a planetary invasion, was rendered non-functional by one man. Not because he was faster. Not because he was stronger. But because he understood the critical flaw in alien doctrine, they planned for enemies they could see. Elias wasn't an army. He was an absence. A collapse of structure. A lesson carved into infrastructure. He didn't come to fight. He came to erase the idea of fighting. By the end, no alarms sounded. No sirens wailed. The base simply fell quiet, like a breath held too long. In the final transmission from the planetary governor, a trembling voice spoke just one sentence before static. "We never even found his shadow." The aftermath wasn't a victory. It was an infection of doubt that spread faster than any weapon. Veldar 9 had not just fallen, it had dissolved. No enemy could be confirmed, no engagement recorded. But the consequences were undeniable. 8,000 personnel, 3 command centers, and a planetary defense grid were gone. Nothing remained except scrambled logs, fragmented audio, and a void where structure used to exist. The Valkyrie Empire issued a blackout. Internally, they called it an anomaly. Publicly, they blamed a reactor failure. But in private sessions, their High Council reviewed what fragments remained: corrupted footage of motionless hallways, distorted shadows that didn't match angles, and a recurring flicker in audio, a heartbeat not synced to any living soldier. Interrogations began. Survivors, those few who'd been off-site or rendered unconscious early, were questioned under chemical truth serums and psionic scans. They repeated one phrase consistently. "He didn't speak." Not a single word was ever heard. No negotiation, no declaration, no demand. Only presence. The other empires took notice. The Cyrex dominions suspended their expansion protocols. The Calther quarantined all forward colonies bordering human space. The Brythal sent envoys under the guise of diplomacy, asking no questions but listening for any hint of human patterns. Everyone felt the same unease. Earth had done something unprecedented. They had answered a galactic threat without ceremony, and without trace. The Council reconvened quietly. No recordings. No observers. Every species sent its most analytical minds. War strategists were replaced by cultural historians. No one wanted to understand how Elias had acted. They wanted to know why Earth had chosen to act in this way. What drove them to such restraint, followed by such disproportionate precision? Speculation failed to provide clarity. Earth had no territorial ambitions. Their economic activity remained steady. Their diplomatic channels stayed open. But when questioned on the incident, Earth issued a single response through a neutral transmission. "We prefer not to repeat ourselves." That was not arrogance. That was calculation. The message wasn't just meant for the Valkyrie. It was for everyone. Earth didn't posture. They demonstrated. They didn't escalate. They concluded. Think tanks scrambled to model human escalation protocols. Nothing matched. Their historical data showed irrational patterns, wars driven by emotion, by pride, by politics. But Elias Ward didn't fit that mold. He wasn't an outlier. He was proof of design. Something had shifted in Earth's philosophy. Further analysis revealed that humanity hadn't built stronger weapons, they'd built stronger deterrents. Elias represented an evolved doctrine, non-replicable threat deployment. One operator. No repeatable pattern. Impossible to counter. What terrified the Council most wasn't the destruction. It was the silence that followed. Earth didn't threaten further action. They didn't gloat. They returned to normal as if nothing had occurred. No parades. No media. Not even internal broadcasts. It was as if they'd expected the operation to be successful because failure had never been considered. The psychological impact dwarfed the tactical. Veldar 9 had been seen as untouchable. Now empires were drafting new protocols on how to respond not to attacks, but to absence. Defense models began factoring in morale decay from unseen adversaries. Recruitment dropped in sectors bordering Terran space. Civilian colonies filed requests to relocate deeper into their home systems. None had seen the enemy. Yet all feared him. And still, Earth said nothing. They issued no alliances, made no demands. Their silence became the narrative. and that silence spread. Elias had done more than disable a planet. He'd forced a galactic recalibration. Hundreds of years of war doctrine became obsolete overnight. The galaxy's most ancient empires had built themselves on the assumption that war required presence. Humanity had proved that presence wasn't necessary. Only the belief that it could return. Every command center now carried a new clause in their threat assessments: unknown human operator protocol, non-engagement recommended. The name Elias Ward was never officially listed in any alien record. But in whispered circles, among commanders and strategists, he became a symbol of the unspoken warning Earth had delivered to the stars: don't knock again. The fear didn't fade. It evolved. Over time, the name wasn't repeated, but the effect lingered in policy, in conversation, in hesitation. Fleet movements near human territories slowed. Patrols were rerouted. Border disputes once sparked by greed were now silenced by a simple unspoken reminder: Earth does not respond twice. Alien academies updated their curricula. Instructors tasked with explaining the collapse of Veldar 9 could offer no concrete enemy profile. Instead, they taught avoidance: how not to attract human attention, how to disengage early, how to read silence as a warning. Psychological warfare was now a formal subject, with an entire unit dedicated to deciphering how humans fight without showing up. Internal dissent began in some factions. High-ranking strategists, previously aggressive in policy, lost their authority. Empires founded on strength now had to justify why they were afraid of a species that had only responded once, and only with one soldier. The paradox unraveled old ideologies. War councils fractured. New factions emerged, advocating for peace not from respect, but from survival. The most advanced empires turned to their archives. Historians combed through old Earth transmissions, analyzing forgotten wars, extinct doctrines, outdated philosophies. What they found didn't bring comfort. Humanity had always been capable of madness. What terrified them was not what humans had done, but what they had chosen not to do. For the first time in centuries, universal threat assessments ranked humans not by firepower or population, but by intent. And Earth's intent was unreadable. That made them the most dangerous. Attempts at diplomacy increased. Neutral envoys visited Earth under various pretenses: scientific exchange, cultural dialogue, trade pacts. Earth accepted, politely and distantly. They gave nothing away. Their representatives never confirmed anything. They smiled, shook hands, and said very little. But that silence carried more weight than any fleet in orbit. Elias Ward was never mentioned. His existence remained a secret even Earth didn't broadcast. But rumors spread through back channels. Intelligence agencies picked up scattered testimonies, wild, contradictory accounts that all pointed to the same impossible conclusion: a single human had undone an entire planetary war machine without open conflict. The story took on a life of its own. In fringe worlds, Elias became legend. Some saw him as myth. Others believed he was a prototype, one of many. The idea was enough. It didn't matter whether he existed in the way rumors claimed. The fear came not from knowing, but from not knowing how many more like him there might be. Some empires tested the silence again, in small, deniable ways, probing Earth's outer colonies, disrupting communication relays, deploying spy drones. Nothing returned. No retaliation. No statement. Just nothing. But in each case, something subtle shifted. An asset failed without explanation, a spy disappeared mid-transmission, a monitoring station went dark and never recovered. Each time, the action stopped. Eventually, most stopped testing. Earth had nothing to prove. And the galaxy had everything to lose. It became policy among the wiser factions: do not engage unless Earth engages first. And if they do, accept the outcome. Back on Earth, life was unchanged. Civilian life went on without ever knowing what had happened. There were no statues, no files, no mention of what Elias had done. His existence wasn't celebrated because it wasn't meant to be known. His mission hadn't been about glory. It had been about consequence. In the deep shadows of Earth's black operations, new protocols were written. Not to replicate Elias, but to ensure no such operation would ever be necessary again. What they had sent into the stars was a last resort. The fact that it had worked was not cause for confidence, it was a reminder of restraint. The lesson was absorbed differently across the galaxy. Some saw Earth as a predator waiting in the dark. Others saw them as scholars who had simply grown tired of explaining themselves. But all agreed on one thing: if Earth responds, it will not be to argue. It will not be to fight for pride, territory, or vengeance. It will be to end the conversation entirely. Elias' war didn't change the galactic balance of power. He erased the need for one. Earth had introduced a new rule: war is no longer a negotiation. It's a warning. Given once,